which is how to stop our thoughts. Still, after meditation and yoga, I experience a lot of thoughts. How to decrease them. Thoughts are not in and of themselves bad. There's nothing inherently wrong with a thought. The problem is the power we've given to the thoughts. Right? First, Descartes tells us, I think, therefore I am. Wow. My thoughts are that which determines my existence. So that's one end of the extreme. I have thoughts, therefore I exist. The problem with that model, and interestingly, actually, he personally ended up rescinding that later in his life and changed it around to, I am, therefore I think. But that didn't get nearly as publicized as the I think, therefore I am, because the whole separateness of body and mind was so in vogue at that time. In any case, what we know is, I am, therefore I think, not I think, therefore I am. And if you doubt that, I would cease to exist the minute my thought ended. I mean, no matter how many thoughts you have, in what rapid succession they come, there are brief moments when you don't have a thought. Maybe over like this, but they exist. If I thought, therefore I am, then after each thought, I would cease to exist. And if I ceased to exist, well, who would have the next thought? Who would be the thinker of the next thought? So, okay, we're not our thoughts. But that doesn't make them inherently evil. Our brain is a wonderful, wonderful tool. It's just not something that we want to let run the show. It's a beautiful saying that the mind is a great tool, but a very bad master. So you don't want to end your thoughts. Spirituality is not becoming dull. It's not an absence of thoughts, an absence of passion, an absence of life. Sometimes people think that when I become spiritual, or spiritual people are those who just kind of live like stones. But it's not that. What we become free of is the thoughts that trouble us. The thoughts that don't let us meditate. The thoughts that don't allow us to experience the space into which grace comes. So it's not about decreasing thoughts. It's simply about gaining an element of control of what my mind does, in the same way that I have an element of control of what my hand does. I get to decide, does my hand reach down and pick up this glass of water and drink it or not? Does my hand pick up the paper or not? Does my hand wave at you or not? I have control over that. Goal is not to cut off my hand. I mean, if suddenly I found my hand going all over the place like this, you know, and it was totally out of my control, well, the solution would not be it should be amputated. I mean, could you imagine saying I've got this arm and it just flails all over the place and I don't know what to do, and the doctor's saying, well, no problem, I'll cut it off for you. You'd say, oh, thanks, but no thanks, I'll let it flail. And in the same way, our thoughts, the goal is not how do I remove my thoughts. It's simply how do I use my brain as a tool. There's a lot of things in life it's good to think about. Anybody here ever get angry? Say things you wish you didn't say, do things you wish you didn't do? Well, it's really helpful afterwards to be able to think about that. What happened? As we were talking on the banks of Ganga in the Aarti. New year. New creation, new me. Well, that's a good thing to think about. How can I become new? What can I leave behind that's old, that's suffocating me, that's festering in me? How can I become new? How can I be the creation? There's so much that's beautiful to think about. It's your loved one's birthday coming up. Think about, what are you going to do for them? The power of thought is lovely. You could never make a plane. Nobody could have gotten here if you couldn't think. You couldn't have made a flight reservation. You couldn't have booked a car. You couldn't have heard us in the Aarti. You couldn't have walked up here. You couldn't have done anything. Our thoughts are powerful. What we need is to just understand how to not make them run the show. And this just takes practice. This is what meditation does. This is what prayer does. The greatest tool I have found on a personal level is a mantra. Because the thoughts, the mind, are very much like a child or very much like a puppy that literally just kind of runs all over the place. But if you give it something, you give your puppy a toy, you give the child a toy, they'll sit for a while, happily in the corner, playing with what you've given them. And a mantra gives the mind something to do. But it's actually much more powerful than that, because it's not just something to do. It's actually a vehicle that carries you from this state of consciousness into a higher state of consciousness. But the first thing that it does is gives the mind something to focus on. Because the truth is, you can only be thinking about one thing at a time. We may think you've got 100 things on your mind, but you can only be one place at a time. So in this moment, you're either here or you're someplace else. And you're only one other place. You're not going to be in 10 places. You may go from place to place to place to place to place, but you can only think about one thing at one time. So if I can be thinking about my mantra, doing my mantra, chanting my mantra, they say it should be not only verbal. You should actually be speaking the mantra, hearing the mantra in your own mind, seeing the mantra, that it occupies all of the senses. It's a very, very, very powerful tool. The breath is another very, very powerful tool. Bring the awareness to the breath. The minute the thoughts come, just bring the awareness. And the last suggestion I would offer is, one of the reasons that the thoughts plague us so much is we hook ourselves into them. We get a thought and we follow it across our consciousness. So we're sitting here, then suddenly we think about what we ate for dinner last night. Maybe we're hungry, maybe we know it's almost dinner time now, so naturally last night's dinner becomes something on our mind. And that thought comes. It's only a 2-second thought. But what we do is we hook ourselves into it. Yeah, that last night dinner was really good. God, it was so nice to be with those people. I wonder when we're going to get to see them again. God, she looked like she'd put on some weight. And they didn't talk to each other much. I hope they're not having trouble in their marriage. So you see, I've gone from one relatively harmless thought, which was very quick, just about dinner last night, to an entire soap opera of the people with whom we happen to share the meal. Because what I've done is I've hooked myself into the thought. And if instead of that, we can just allow them to breeze across our awareness, but stay focused on the space between them. So the other thing we do when the thoughts come is suddenly I'm thinking about dinner of last night. And then I go in my own mind, oh, look at you. You're the worst. Like, we've only been sitting here for, 15 minutes and you can't even focus? You're never going to be spiritual. You're never going to get this meditation thing done. Look at you, always on dinner. Forget it. You're not going to have any dinner. I'm going to make you fast today. This is your punishment. Then, of course, the other mind goes, oh, my God, but I can't fast. I've got low blood sugar. What's going to happen? Oh, my God, I'm going to go into, diabetic shock here. There's not even a hospital nearby. So, again, I've taken something that was really small, really short, really innocuous, would have been over in a couple seconds. And now I've really ruined my meditation. Now I've given myself, an insulin shock in my own mind. And this is where what we have to do is just, it comes. We don't hook ourselves into it. We don't look at it. We don't name it. We don't analyze it. We stay focused on the space between the thoughts. A visualization to think of is if you're staring up at a blue sky and clouds are going by. Well, either you can focus your attention on a cloud and follow it all the way across the sky, or you can stay focused on the blueness as the clouds go. And the goal is to stay focused on the blueness, and the clouds just breeze by. The thoughts just breeze by. And slowly, 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 if you can refrain from hooking yourself into the cloud, into the thought, if you can refrain from the judgment and the berating of the self and the analysis of the thought or the analysis of the fact that you're having a thought, just stay focused on the blueness of the sky, on the mantra, on the breath. And yeah, the thoughts will just blow across your consciousness. And slowly the space between them will get longer and longer. And they'll blow across even quicker and quicker and quicker. But don't see thoughts as the enemy. Thoughts are your friends. Your lack of control of the mind is the enemy, not the thoughts themselves. And that control can be learned and achieved the same way that we learn control over our fingers to play the piano, the same way we learn control over our feet to do dance, the same way we learn to do everything with any organ of the body. We can train the mind. It just takes practice.